your extended forecast.
Claudette is now a hurricane, 75-mile-per-hour winds. It could strengthen between now and landfall tonight, which is expected tonight between Galveston and, say, Corpus Christi, Houston to Corpus Christi in that vicinity, moving toward the west at 12. This is as of 5 o'clock. Hurricane reconnaissance went in around midnight and said that it was a hurricane. And now we've got hurricane warnings in effect. High Island, Texas to Baffin Bay. This means hurricane conditions are expected within 24 hours. The hurricane watch is in effect between Baffin Bay and Brownsville, Texas. And here's a check of the tropical storm warning, Intracoastal City, Louisiana, and High Island, Texas. So please bear that in mind. But I've been reading statements about flooding already going on. Coastal flooding, we could see seas up to 18 feet. I've been talking to our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. He'll be with you momentarily. And you can see that we've got heavy rain coming down. So we still see rain as a big threat with this hurricane as it moves its way toward the Texas Gulf Coast. There's a look at the eye, still offshore, still some room to strengthen before landfall tonight. And you can see these bands getting into Galveston. If you're not with us a little earlier, Jim Cantori was reporting from Galveston. He'll be continuing to do that. But boy, those winds were just driving those rains horizontally. And that's probably what you can expect at times if you live close to the shoreline, so it's not a good idea to be driving. 41-mile-per-hour winds right now. Again, storm surge, 3 to 5 feet. We could see 5 to 8-inch rains. So we're concerned about flooding with these heavy rains. So tonight, landfall, then making its way into the southern interior of Texas as time goes on. Otherwise, we've got a bit of a wave in the intertropical convergence zone that we'll be monitoring for you, but relatively quiet right now. Severe weather threatening right now in the Midwest. We've got severe thunderstorm warnings for Lake County in northwestern Indiana, Will County, and northeastern Illinois. Kim?
Marshall Cease joins us now from your weather today. Good morning, Marshall.
Good morning, Kim.
Tell us how you'll be following Hurricane Claudette's progress.
Well, Kim, we'll be tracking the storm on 3 fronts. Jim Cantori continues his live reports on Claudette's impact in Galveston, Texas. Jeff Morrow will join us live from Port O'Connor with the storm's effect there. And hurricane expert Dr. Steve Lyons will help keep you ahead of the hurricane. He'll have the very latest on Claudette's progress. Now, Kim shows us what impact the heat is having on Europe's economy.
Oh, those high temperatures put a squeeze on businesses and energy supplies overseas. Bloomberg Money Barometer looks at a damaging effect on Europe's economy.
Good morning. A heat wave gripping Europe sent demand for power to run air conditioners soaring, risking blackouts in Italy and Spain. Weekend heat in Rome delayed open-air concerts featuring Alanis Morissette as well as Craig David. Grape growers in central Spain also warned of potential losses to the crop used to make Mancha and other brands of wine. According to the La Union Wine Cooperative, a drought in central Spain has cut grape production by 1 or 2%. The cooperative produces 30 million kilograms of grapes a year. Other areas of Europe are feeling the heat as well. Power prices in France, Europe's largest power producer and exporter, jumped to an 18-month high. In Britain, wholesale prices tripled to a record. Also, lack of rain in Scandinavia drove power prices for winter delivery to a record on the country's regional exchange. For the Weather Channel, I'm Linda Bell with the Bloomberg Money Barometer.
Let's find out what the weather is going to be like for you and your weekend plans. Let's check out the east. We notice a little wet weather along the I-95 corridor. That means New York City and Washington. A chance of scattered storms in the northern plains, perhaps Minneapolis. And notice some concentrated rains around Buffalo, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. We could see some messy weather. Hot in the southern plains, Oklahoma City. Dallas looking hot in the Metroplex, the 90s there, but 70s in Buffalo. And you can see 90s in Little Rock Sunday.
A little patchy fog in the northeast this morning, Dennis.
I think that'll break off quickly, though. It looks like a good day for travel, that I-95 corridor. New York, good travel. Philadelphia, lots of sunshine. In D.C., good-looking travel.
The forecast for your area. Your extended forecast.
rain continues here on Galveston Island, and it's going to get heavier. I'll tell you why and show you why in just a moment on a live report from the seawall in Galveston.
Flooding rains may travel rough in parts of the Carolinas. Find out where heavy rain could snarl traffic today.
Strong storms have brought tornadoes to parts of Minnesota head east. And we'll show you where they're headed next. And good morning and welcome to this edition of Weather Center. I'm Mark Mancuso.
And I'm Melissa Barrington. Thanks for joining us. And we begin with Hurricane Claudette.
And our storm is lashing the Texas coast with strong winds and very heavy rain and coastal flooding. Here's the very latest for you. You see the infrared satellite picture, and you can see right on the central part of the Texas coast, right around the reds and orange, there's an area where not much is happening. That's the eye. It's making a landfall right now. Maximum sustained winds now up to 80 miles an hour. Expect strongest winds the next 1 to 2 hours as Claudette moves inland here. And with our storm making its move onshore, the hurricane warnings have been adjusted just a little bit from Baffin Bay up to High Island, Texas. And we also have a small area of tropical storm warnings in effect here in Texas from High Island to Sabine Pass. But all the tropical storm warnings have been discontinued on the Louisiana coast. But along the coast, we do have a lot of problems with extremely heavy rain and the flooding of the coastal roads.
We want to continue our hurricane coverage with Claudette and meteorologist Jim Cantori, who is live in Galveston, Texas.
Jim, what's it looking like with those winds, and how about the high water coming on in?
Well, Mark, the water, first of all, the water is not as bad as it was. You can see on a nice day here in Galveston, you can walk all the way out on these bricks and through here. Now, this morning, you could not see any of these. The water was crashing up against the seawall and spraying up another 10 to 15 feet. So we have definitely improved our sea conditions big time. We've also noticed, too, the winds have gone from northeast to straight on shore now, so that's going to be more southeast with the way that Galveston Island is oriented. Now, Galveston Island is about 7 miles long, but if you go down from here 2 to 3 miles, I want to show you some pictures here, because you basically go from Seawall Boulevard to what they call 3005, and unfortunately there's no seawall down there. So what happens is all that water comes in and just sits over the roads, and they get some coastal flooding there. It happens a lot. We saw it happen last year in Fay when I was here, and it certainly is going to happen with a hurricane. Now, winds, as far as what we've seen, Mark, hurricane force gusts, no, we haven't seen anything like that at all. We've seen more of a frothy Gulf of Mexico than anything else. Our max sustained, or max gust, I should say, has been 56 miles an hour. But offshore, tremendous rain coming into the band here, so the heavy rain is going to be an issue here probably for the next 30 minutes or so. Let's get a confirmation on that. Dr. Steve Lyons, our hurricane expert. Steve, I was noticing on your tropical update there, it looks like a pretty intense band of rain coming this way. Can you confirm that for me, please?
Jim, you're still in for some wet weather over the next few hours. Let's show you the latest radar imagery, and that'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. First of all, I put Jim's name there. He's sitting in Galveston. You can see still some bands of rain coming in toward the Galveston area. The good news is the circulation is landfalling over here in Matagorda Bay, so the wind is weakening in time where Jim is. And notice also up here some of these heavy rain showers well up north of Houston now. So heavy rain over Houston, but the whole system is moving to the east. Now, Jeff Morrow's down here in the eye at Port O'Connor. Unfortunately, the eye is interfering with our signal and we can't quite get it, but if we get some information from him, we'll show you what he's going through here. And he's basically at this dot right here. We expect the water to rise there on the order of 5 to 7 feet after the eye passes, when the wind is coming out of the southeast, and these low-lying areas basically from 0 to 5 feet are pretty much going to be underwater over the next hour and a half or so as the system moves inland. There you see the circulation moving right into Matagorda Bay there. You can see the winds. Inland, the winds aren't that strong. It's offshore, the winds are a little bit stronger. We've had primarily tropical storm sustained winds and gusts over land, which is good news. But the heavy rainfall is going to be increasing as our track takes it generally westward. We're going to be watching for the potential for increasing flood potential out towards San Antonio and then out toward the Big Bend area over the next 24, 36, 48 hours. So we could see some localized flooding out here. So we'll be back. Melissa?
And Mark here, thanks a lot, Dr. Steve. And reports of heavy rain already of 1 to 3 inches across parts of southeast Texas. Combine that with the high tides, and we'll see considerable flooding of coastal roads. Flood watches have just been issued for about 6 counties. Now let's check on the weather for the remainder of the South, and here's Melissa.
And I want to show you the close-up winds here across parts of the South.
forecast for your area. On Thursday, we'll see fair skies. Look for a chance of thunderstorms on Friday. And on Saturday, expect fair skies.
It's 10:20 a.m. Central Time. The eye of Claudette is coming ashore right now. We've had consistent winds well over hurricane force, with some gusts upwards of 80, and we're approximating here maybe 90 miles an hour. A lot of debris flying in the air, pieces of trees, lots of shingles, and some power lines going down. We've had some reports that some of the power poles in the town of Port O'Connor have been knocked over, and there are some live wires, so it's very dangerous. Behind me, you can see some of the storm surge here. Another very powerful gust of wind. It's very dangerous out here right now. We're going to try to move our location. Jeff Morrow reporting from Port O'Connor, Texas.
Time now for our tropical update on the Weather Channel. I'm Janetta Jones. All eyes are on Hurricane Claudette this morning and this afternoon, and we want to take a look at the current conditions for you right now. This is the latest information as of 11 a.m. Central Daylight Time, and winds were at 80 miles per hour at that point, but you saw that report from Jeff Morrow. We are expecting that we'll have more information very, very soon. Its movement at that time was west-northwest at 10 miles per hour. We have hurricane warnings in effect from High Island, Texas to Baffin Bay, Texas. And I want to let you know also that we have a tornado watch in effect as the hurricane is making landfall. For the latest, we turn to our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. Dr. Lyons, the eye of the hurricane is on shore. What can we expect from the rest of the hurricane?
Well, you can see there where Jeff was, the wind's coming on shore, and so is that surge. So they're getting the worst there in the greater Matagorda Bay area. Let me show you the latest satellite imagery. I'll put a dot there. Jeff is somewhere in the vicinity of that white dot. You can see the winds are coming onshore on the backside of the circulation, and that's where the water is piling up onshore. And they're gusting apparently to 75 or 80 miles per hour, at least that's the estimate. In the meantime, farther up the coast, it's improving. Now, of course, the circulation is moving very close to Victoria. Last report there I saw was sustained about 35 miles an hour, gusting to 50, but this little band of yellow and red is coming towards you. You're going to get some very strong winds here the next hour, hour and a half or so in Victoria, Texas. In the meantime, the overall picture there is the circulation over Matagorda Bay, moving basically to the west, west-northwest. It's starting to decrease wind speed-wise over the greater Gulf of Mexico. Notice down in South Texas, no problems down there. The wind is offshore, and we're going to continue to be in pretty good shape there. Janetta?
All right, Dr. Lyons, how far inland will the strongest effects of Claudette reach?
Well, that's going to be in the form of rainfall. Let me show you our projected path, and then from that we can go on. It's moving at about 10, 12 miles per hour. It should continue to move that way to the west-northwest or west, and that's going to bring the potential for rainfall flooding in toward the San Antonio area, the Big Bend area, over the next 2 to 3 days. So anybody in that track, be very cautious, especially if you're a camper in a low-lying area, in a gulch or something where you could have flash flooding. Now, in the meantime, we've got some other things in the tropics that are very, very quiet. Let's look at the large-scale tropical Atlantic. Little low-pressure center up here we're monitoring, but it's in the central Atlantic and not expected to affect anybody, not expected to develop either. The remainder of the Caribbean is wonderful, and the eastern Pacific is also very, very quiet today. We're monitoring this one cluster of clouds for potential for development over the next several days. It's moving west away from land. Janetta?
All right, thanks so much, Dr. Steve Lyons, our hurricane expert. Now let's talk about what else is happening across the country. We have the chance for severe thunderstorms ripping on across parts of the upper Midwest. In fact, if you're in Indiana or Kentucky or Ohio, look out for the line of nasty thunderstorms that's moving in your direction. We've had some severe thunderstorms reported south of Indianapolis, moving past Bloomington towards the Kentucky border here. Looks like Cincinnati will be getting into some very wet conditions a little bit later on, and we're going to see some heavy downpours moving in your direction. Obviously, here's Evansville, Indiana. You're looking okay. However, in Louisville, these storms are packing a punch, and they're going to be heading right straight down I-65 very, very shortly. So, yeah, be prepared for that. Meanwhile, the heat is building across the western half of the country. Just how hot is it going to be? Will we see more records? Stay tuned.
So what did the doctor say?
He said the reason that I'm having trouble getting around is pain from arthritis.
Really?
He said to get moving again, I should take a leave.
But we've always taken Tylenol.
I know, but the doctor said that nothing is better than Aleve.
Doctors know Aleve can stop pain all day with fewer pills. And Aleve works right at the site of arthritis.
So how's the Aleve working?
Like a charm.
Aleve. And for all-day non-drowsy relief of your sinus pressure and pain, try Aleve Sinus and Headache.
The Home Depot is more than a store. It's creating a new night spot.
Your forecast. Your extended forecast.
What a difference a few hours makes. I'm meteorologist Jim Cantori on the other side of the seawall, on the water side. I'll show you what it was like, though, as Hurricane Claudette was heading ashore this morning. Stay tuned.
Hurricane Claudette is pounding Port O'Connor, Texas. Part of the eye is over the region right now. We'll have all the latest information on Hurricane Claudette right now. Hello and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Rich Johnson.
And I'm Janetta Jones. Welcome to this edition of Weather Center. Hurricane Claudette is making landfall in Texas at this hour.
Early this morning, bands of rain and high winds began pummeling Galveston Island. Now let me show you the latest that we have. As of the 11 a.m. Central Daylight Advisory, 28.5 north, 96.3 west. That's about 10 miles east-northeast of Port O'Connor. Top sustained winds still at 80 miles per hour. We expect that to be lowered later today as Claudette continues to make its way inland. It's moving off to the west-northwest at 10 miles per hour, and the pressure has been steady over the past hour or two.
And I want to let you know that we have hurricane warnings in effect from High Island, Texas to Baffin Bay, Texas, and a tornado watch in effect that includes much of the southeastern Texas Gulf Coast as the hurricane is making landfall. We'll go live in a moment, but first we turn to our very own meteorologist Jeff Morrow. He filed this report from Port O'Connor, Texas as the storm was making landfall.
We are now in the eye of Hurricane Claudette as it moved over Port O'Connor, Texas. Conditions are so much different than what they were. This is part of the storm surge that came in here off of the Bay of Matagorda, upwards of about 3 or 4 feet. If you pan up here, you can actually see the sun is out now here in the eye. What a dramatic change from what we had just a few minutes ago when you couldn't see probably more than 10 or 15 or 20 yards down the street, the air filled with spray and rain and debris flying. It was quite a scene here. And again, just as fast almost, it's gone now to just a very light breeze, and the waves have actually calmed down on Matagorda Bay. So just a dramatic difference here. We got slammed pretty hard as the eye wall of Claudette moved on through. This is Jeff Morrow reporting from Port O'Connor, Texas.
All right, thanks so much, Jeff Morrow. We'll be checking back with him a little bit later. And now we want to turn to our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons, for the very latest on what's going on with Hurricane Claudette. Steve?
Well, thanks, Janetta. Let's look at this wind graphic because we want to look at some of the impacts associated with the system. And we're down on this lower end of the Category 1 hurricane range, minimal impact from wind. So that's not what we've been concerned about today. Our primary concern has been water. Water in the form of surge along the coast, and we've seen it as high as 5 to 7 feet in some locations. You saw Jeff there in Port O'Connor. We saw 5 feet in Galveston. 5 feet in Freeport as well, maybe higher in some locations. So that's the big story. And rainfall is going to be accumulating. I just talked to Dr. Forbes, our severe weather expert in Freeport. Some bands of rain producing upwards of about 3 inches per hour of rain. And there's Freeport there. That band right there, about 3 inches per hour is what he's estimating based on Doppler radar. He'll start to give you some indications of where the flooding might occur as I get tired out here. There's a circulation center moving to the west at about 10 miles per hour west-northwest. We expect it to continue to move toward the west or west-northwest through time, and that's going to bring the potential for rainfall flooding inland. We think the system will be moving fast enough that it will potentially be moderate impact in some isolated areas, but not major flooding. At least that's our thought right now. Janetta?
Dr. Lyons, how far inland will the strongest effects of Claudette be reaching?
Well, the wind will stay very close to the coast, and the system will weaken fairly quickly as it moves over land. But the rainfall will extend well into central and west Texas over the next several days, Janetta.
All right, thanks so much, Dr. Steve Lyons. We'll be checking back with you in about half an hour. Right now, Rich has the latest information on Hurricane Claudette, a new advisory, right, Rich?
That's right. We now have the noon advisory out, the noon advisory for Hurricane Claudette. As of noon, the watches and the warnings are still the same. Hurricane watches and that tropical storm, or I should say the hurricane warning, tropical storm warning, still the same. But as of noontime, Central Daylight Time, Claudette located about 28.5 north, 96.7 west. That's about 15 miles west-northwest of Port O'Connor, or also about 25 miles south-southeast of Victoria. And we're looking at it still making its way to the west-northwest at about 12 miles per hour. Still the maximum sustained winds at around 80 miles per hour. So that's what we're looking at with Claudette.
Strong as it moved on by. In fact, we have some pictures around Port O'Connor here that we can show you, and I can talk about a little bit of the damage that we did see. We've seen a lot of power lines. They're still down in many areas. Some of the power poles actually snapped in the force of the winds. The highest wind reading that we got was 74 miles an hour on a anemometer with a storm chaser here, but then his anemometer broke. We'd have to estimate after that some of those winds were getting over 80 an hour. A lot of coming off roofs, a lot of tree limbs in the air, and some houses were damaged here as well. So again, very tumultuous morning as that eye wall came through, and then just as quickly it ended and we were in the eye. Now we're kind of on the western side, but it is not as intense. So that is some good news. So Claudette really gave us a pretty good rounding here in Port O'Connor, Texas. Now let's go to Jim Cantore in Galveston.
As we
forecast. On Thursday, we'll see fair skies. Look for a chance of thunderstorms on Friday. And on Saturday, expect fair skies.
Well, it's 10 minutes before the hour and time for your tropical update. Of course, we've been updating you on the movement of Claudette all day. And Claudette came ashore this morning bringing strong winds and high surf to the Galveston area. A few buildings have already lost their rooftops, and 50-mile-an-hour winds have weakened structures. And the strong winds are not over yet. we'll have a live report from Jim Cantori in Galveston at the top of the hour. Well, let's see what's going on right now with Tropical Storm Claudette. Earlier it was a hurricane. Now it's been downgraded to a tropical storm. And here are the latest coordinates. It is now centered at 28.6 north, 97.5 west. That puts the center about 40 miles west-southwest of Victoria, Texas. The maximum sustained winds now at 70 miles per hour, and it's moving west. And that's good news that it is moving to the west at 14 miles per hour. Now, when we have these tropical systems moving inland, it is not uncommon to see flooding, especially if they're slow movers or if they sort of get hung up and don't move much at all. You can really have devastating flooding. And while this system is moving, that is good news, although we still are concerned about flooding nevertheless. Some areas locally could see 5 to 10 inches of rain, but maybe not as bad as it could be. Still a serious situation. Some of the details associated with Claudette in Calhoun County, Texas, and Port Alto, Texas. Every structure damaged. Port Lavaca, Texas, the high school gym's roof is gone. And in Seadrift, the sustained winds were measured at 97 miles per hour with gusts to 111 miles per hour. So still a powerful system. It's moving inland though, and as that happens, it will tend to weaken and the winds will tend to weaken, but still the rain will fall. And again, that is going to be a big problem, the flooding rains. We're seeing lots of cloud cover, and underneath these clouds, here's the wet weather. Now, it's affected you somewhat in Houston, but it's worse to your south and to your west. Corpus Christi still seeing the rain, and you can see the rotation around the center of circulation here, and those areas of yellows and oranges and reds, that's where some of the heavier rain is falling right now. So again, even though it is moving, we'll still look for the potential for some heavy rain here. And farther northward, you can see it doesn't quite extend up toward Austin, at least the bulk of the precipitation. But San Antonio, you are in for a rather soggy night tonight. As far as rainfall amounts, 5 to 10 inches locally here, and that's why we're concerned about flooding, and that's why a flood watch is in effect for much of the southern part of the state. Now, something else we see with tropical systems when they move on shore is the possibility for tornadoes. And we do have a tornado watch that's in effect here for parts of southern Texas. So look out, there is the chance for those isolated tornadoes. And you want to, again, you want to keep an eye out for that. As far as the windy conditions, we are still seeing winds that are 20 and 30 miles per hour. And there's even more as we move farther southward, more windy conditions, close to 40 mile per hour wind gust here in the southern part of the state. So we'll watch for that, and still some tropical storm warnings in effect from Freeport down to Port Aransas. As far as the movement and the future of Claudette, this is what we're thinking over the next couple of days. That general westward movement continues, so that by Thursday morning we think we're going to see this system over in the western part of the state. So we're still looking at a good deal of rain as this storm system heads across parts of southern and central Texas. So we will watch for severe weather here. A couple of other areas to keep an eye on, isolated severe in the Ohio Valley as well as to the west. Stay with us.
LL Bean clothing and gear have long been designed to help you cope with most every kind of climate, including the economic climate. This fall, you'll find remarkable values at LL Bean. Every item still made to last with our 100% guarantee of satisfaction. Call today.